We have a major Cowboys update as a new report reveals a move incoming for the Dallas Cowboys, with 3 different players being on the chopping block of not making the roster. And the third guy on this list, he is going to surprise you. Welcome into Cowboys Digest. I'm Jace Andrews, and I appreciate you joining us. And let's get right into today's video. You already know the topic. 3 different players heading into training camp for the Dallas Cowboys that are on the chopping block. Now, I mentioned there are some surprising people that I could list in this, but the first one, not too shocking. It's Payton Turner, who was a former first-round pick, played the past 4 seasons with the New Orleans Saints. Last year was his best year. 16 games, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 10 solo tackles, 21 combined, and 3 tackles for loss. Overall, was by far his best season. However, for a former first-round pick, these stats just aren't going to cut it in his 4 years with the New Orleans Saints. Now, there's obviously external factors that go into it, but playing in just 16 games only one time in his career, first season 5 games, 8 games, 2 games, listen, there's been injury bugs, there's been stuff that's happened, I get it. But when you look at this guy and you look at the Dallas Cowboys, the only benefit that Payton Turner is going to bring to this is that the defensive line is in need of some help and in need of some depth. The problem is, once they get Micah Parsons on a contract, which I am very positive will happen soon enough, it's going to be something that the Cowboys have to, figure out. And Payton Turner doesn't exactly fit into the equation in some facets. And that's kind of where we go into our first report on this, talking about the former 28th overall pick. And we go that right now. This is Randy Gurzy of the Dallas Cowboys SI saying, quote, "The 28th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft played in just 31 games for the New Orleans Saints as he battled injury concerns. He now finds himself in a crowded room in Dallas where opportunities are limited. That might be enough to keep him from earning a shot with the Cowboys," end quote. And when you talk about this Dallas Cowboys defensive line, it's worth noting that it's going to be a pretty deep one, but there's not going to be many people that stand out. I think that's the biggest thing whenever we look at the depth chart on the defensive line is, we might not have a standout defensive tackle, or, obviously with Micah Parsons, you have the end there, but it's going to be pretty depth heavy. There's going to be a lot of depth with this Dallas Cowboys squad. And so in that facet, you're looking at Payton Turner and thinking, okay, where exactly does he fit? And that might not be anywhere. It might not be on this Cowboys roster. He's in danger of just not being able to come out here and make that spot. When there's only 53 spots on the line, it's definitely a thing that is not going to be an easy thing to match. Now, that leads us into our second guy. And this guy is a quarterback, but he's not who you're thinking. It is none other than Will Grier. Now, obviously, the Dallas Cowboys have QB1 and, in my mind, QB2 filled out with Dak Prescott and Joe Milton III, who came over on a recent trade from the New England Patriots. And so the Dallas Cowboys sit here. They have 3 quarterbacks. There's nobody fighting for that third quarterback spot besides Will Grier. However, a lot of teams, when they have the, overall happiness with their quarterbacks 1 and 2, which I think the Dallas Cowboys have. They have trust in Dak Prescott. They have trust in Joe Milton, that they really don't need to keep a third quarterback on the roster. Now, there is a little bit to talk about with him and what would happen if he doesn't make the roster, but we go to the report here. Randy Gurzy of the Dallas Cowboys SI saying, quote, "Unfortunately, that doesn't guarantee him a spot," talking about him being not competing for anybody on QB number 3. Now, Greer might not be fighting with another quarterback, but he could still be on the chopping block if Dallas decides to go with 2 quarterbacks, end quote. And a lot of teams do this. In fact, the Kansas City Chiefs did this a couple years ago. They did it last year even with Carson Wentz. A lot of teams choose to carry 2 quarterbacks when you have this bona fide stud, which, again, I'm not going to call Dak Prescott a bona fide stud just yet, especially after last year, but you have trust in him. You have faith he is going to be your starting quarterback on game number 1 to game number 17. That's just the way you look at him. And in my mind, when you look at this roster, I think the 53 spots, you don't need 3 quarterbacks. Joe Milton might be put into some packages, and Will Grier, I say this with all context, he still can be on the team on the practice squad, not with the 53-man roster, in those 16 practice squad spots, because when you look at the Cowboys and when you look at teams who in the past have only kept 2 quarterbacks, there is a third quarterback. He's just always on the practice squad. And so when you're looking at this, and you see Will Grier, who, again, coming out of West Virginia, he just doesn't seem like he's ever going to be a starting quarterback, much less even maybe a backup quarterback on an NFL roster. And so in that case scenario, if you're able to, keep him to the point where you can put him on the practice squad, that's great. However, the problem with this is if you do not have him make the 53-man roster spot, he can be picked up by a different team. It does not guarantee that he will be on the practice squad come week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And say you need him, then in that case, you're kind of screwed because another team picked him up. Now, the odds of him being picked up, I think, are pretty slim, but that's not to say it couldn't happen. And so for Jerry Jones, for Brian Schottenheimer, it's really about looking in depth and seeing how important is Will Grier? How important is he to this roster? Because, again, like I said, there's no one on this depth chart competing for that third QB spot. It's just Will Grier. But I trust Dak Prescott. I trust Joe Milton. So in that case, I'm fine with letting Will Grier be open to other teams. And hopefully no one takes him, because I do like him, and put him on the practice squad. That way, if you were, for whatever reason, have Dak go down and Joe Milton come up and you need a backup, you have Will Grier at the ready and bring him up from the practice squad right away. Now, the third guy on this list, as we kind of round this out, he is somebody who I don't think you're expecting, because he's a fan favorite. He's a guy who last year had a bit more of a spot than he has this year because of certain signings. Of course, I am talking about none other than Deuce Vaughn, the fan favorite out of Kansas State. Last year played in just 7 games, rushed 17 times for a combined 88 yards on the ground and receiving yards through the air on 3 receptions. And let's just be quite frank. The Cowboys are in a position now where Deuce Vaughn, who hasn't produced in 2 years here, doesn't fit the roster restrictions anymore. He doesn't fit in that 53-man mold. And when you look at Deuce Vaughn compared to the other running backs in this room, it's a question of if he's even the 4th at this point. Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders are for sure your backs 1 and 2, at least up until this point. I know Miles Sanders has not had a great 2 years with the Panthers, but he's a veteran and he's put ahead. But even if he doesn't do well, Jaden Blue is right behind him. And on this depth chart, you see Deuce Vaughn there in the 4th spot, because on ESPN, they don't have the full 50 or 90-man roster all in the depth chart. However, on their roster right now, they have a ton of different running backs, and like I said, it's going to be running back by committee, and they want to have any and all opportunities of running backs to succeed in there. Not to say Deuce Vaughn isn't a guy who could succeed, he's just of the options not the one that's going to succeed the most. You also have Phil Maffa. You have Hunter Lipke. There's a couple of guys on this roster right now that I would put over Deuce Vaughn. Now, do I love Deuce Vaughn and do I want him to be on the Cowboys? 1,000%. He was one of the great stories, getting to see his dad call him and saying, "We're drafting you." Obviously, out of Kansas State in the Big 12, coming and being in a close-by team. It's great. But right now, the Cowboys are trying to build a winning roster. And unfortunately, the NFL is a business. And if you aren't competing to the level that we need you to, in that space, you have to be let go. And Deuce Vaughn, unfortunately, might just be collateral damage at this point. Now, I've given you 3 guys who are on the chopping block. I want you to let me know in the comment section if there's anybody else that you don't see making the roster, or if you think one of these 3 guys will easily make the roster and I'm out of my mind. I want to hear your discussions down in the comments section. I'm looking at them all the time. I appreciate everybody watching and the support. We're continuing to try and grow and grow and grow this channel. And so if you're one of these people who watch to the end, I do appreciate there. And really, really, really from the bottom of my heart, I'm happy you're here and hope you keep watching and keep tuning in to Cowboys Digest. But that does it for me for this episode. We will see you next time here on Cowboys Digest. I'm Jace Andrews saying peace out from Dallas.